After you've been entering transactions for several months or several years, finding transactions can seem daunting. It's like looking for a needle in a pile of needles. Fortunately, there are a variety of methods to quickly find what you're looking for in QuickBooks. In this topic, you learn how to use centers, like Expense Center, and lists, like the customer's list, to find transactions. Let's look at the Expense Center first. To get there, just select the Expenses tab on your navbar. This center lists all of your money out type transactions, like expenses, checks, and bills. By default, the most recent transactions appear first, but you can change how QuickBooks sorts them by clicking any of the column headers. As you might imagine, this list of transactions can get pretty long. So if you're looking for a particular transaction, click the Filter button. This menu lets you look for transactions from a specific payee, date range, category, which is another name for account, and much more. Like in the Expenses Center, if you click Sales from the navbar, you'll see all of the Sales Center. This center also lists transactions, but they're money type in transactions, such as invoices, sales receipts, and even estimates. Much like the Customers and Vendors list, you use the buttons at the top to filter the transactions displayed towards the bottom. But if you want to look for something specific, click the filter to look for transactions by type, delivery method, payment status, date, and much more. Another easy way to find transactions is from your Customer and Vendors lists. If you already know the vendor or the customer that the transaction was with, open the appropriate list, and then click the customer or the vendor's name. At the bottom of the screen, QuickBooks shows you a list of transactions you have with that customer or vendor. Plus, from that list, you can click on the transaction to take a closer look at it, or even edit it. In the next few topics, you'll learn even more ways to find transactions in QuickBooks. You learn 4 ways to save time in QuickBooks. First, how to find transactions quickly. The faster you find something, the more time you save. You learn how to find transactions from centers and lists first. Then you'll use the search feature and advanced search features. Second, you learn how to use recurring transactions. This automates the process of entering a repeated transaction, like an invoice you send every week, or a bill you receive every month. Third, you learn about using QuickBooks Payments to get paid a lot faster. When you use QuickBooks Payments, customers can pay you directly through invoices that you send them either by paying with a credit card, debit card, or even bank transfers. QuickBooks then cuts down on your data entry by recording the payment and the deposit for you. Last, you learn about user interface tips like QuickMath, which lets you use some fields like a calculator, or date shortcuts, which helps you enter dates faster. And last, keyboard hotkeys that let you open and edit transactions without even using your mouse. Next, you'll learn about finding transactions with centers and lists.
One more way to find transactions is with the search menu, which looks like a magnifying glass. When you first open this menu, you'll see the last 10 transactions you recorded. This is very handy if you want to view or edit a transaction that you recently entered. Each transaction displays the type, number, payee, date, and monetary value. If you're looking for a transaction that's not recent, click in the search field to look for transactions by number, amount, or date. But what if you want to search for a transaction using some other piece of data? You'll learn about that next.
By its very nature, bookkeeping is repetitive. Many transactions reoccur each day, each week, each month, each year. For instance, you probably receive a bill for your phone service and rent every month. Recording this same transaction every single month can be time-consuming. Fortunately, QuickBooks offers a solution to reduce the amount of time you spend entering this same transaction over and over again. With recurring transactions, you program QuickBooks to create transactions for you at a set time in the future. Over the next few topics, you'll learn how to set up and edit recurring transactions so you can reduce the amount of time you spend doing these repetitive tasks. In our example, we'll be using a recurring invoice to a customer, but you can perform the same steps with most any transaction in QuickBooks. By its very nature, bookkeeping is repetitive. Many transactions reoccur each day, each week, each month, each year. For instance, you probably receive a bill for your phone service and rent every month. Recording this same transaction every single month can be time-consuming. Fortunately, QuickBooks offers a solution to reduce the amount of time you spend entering this same transaction over and over again. With recurring transactions, you program QuickBooks to create transactions for you at a set time in the future. Over the next few topics, you'll learn how to set up and edit recurring transactions so you can reduce the amount of time you spend doing these repetitive tasks. In our example, we'll be using a recurring invoice to a customer, but you can perform the same steps with most any transaction in QuickBooks.
To set up a scheduled transaction, select the gear icon, and then Recurring Transactions. Then select New, and choose what type of transaction you want to schedule for later. Almost all transaction types can be set up as a recurring transaction. The only things that can't occur are transactions that you have to apply to other transactions, like bill payments or customer payments for invoices. This company invoices a customer each month for gardening services, so let's choose Invoice. This screen looks a lot like an invoice. There's a customer field, terms, and an area for products and services. But there are some pretty big differences too. When you eventually save a recurring transaction, you're only saving a template. QuickBooks then uses the template you create to record transactions on a future date. How does QuickBooks know when to create the transaction in the future? It uses the information you input in these fields. The first step is to fill out a form with the information you want to include on future transactions, such as the customer's name, the products or services this company charges the customer for on a regular basis, and any other details like shipping information or your company's custom fields. In the next topic, you'll learn to fill out the schedule portion for a recurring transaction. Let's name this template Monthly Gardening for Cool Cars. This is a scheduled transaction because we want QuickBooks to create it for us every month. The interval is how often QuickBooks creates this transaction, as well as when. We issue this invoice monthly, but you have plenty of other choices, such as daily, or every couple days, weekly, or every couple of weeks, and also yearly. We want this invoice issued monthly, every month, but you can change these settings to whatever suits you. If you want QuickBooks to create the transaction a number of days before this date, use this field to enter the number of days before the scheduled date that you want QuickBooks to create the transaction. This is helpful if you need to create a check or invoice a few days earlier to print it out and send it off through the mail. The start date tells QuickBooks when to start recording the transaction for you. Also, you can program QuickBooks to stop recording this transaction. If you choose By, you enter a date and QuickBooks will stop entering the transaction by that date. Or you can choose After, in which case you can program QuickBooks to stop entering the transaction after a number of occurrences. This customer has signed a 12-month contract, so enter 12. Use this section to have QuickBooks email the transaction when it's created, and/or mark it as printed later. If you tend to invoice customers for billable expenses, you can also choose to include those. Once you've filled everything out, select Save Template. Now QuickBooks takes over the job of invoicing that customer. But what if the customer wants to add something to the recurring services or signs a new contract? You learn to deal with that next. It's easy to edit a recurring transaction. This customer just extended their gardening contract. Click Edit. Change anything you want, and then save the template again. That's it. There's more you can do with recurring transactions, though. You can also duplicate a template, which is helpful if you have a lot of clients that you regularly charge for the same thing. Or if you want to remove a recurring transaction, you can always delete it. Use recurring transactions to lighten your data entry workload.
QuickBooks Online Payments is a powerful feature that allows you to include a Pay Now button on the invoices that you email to your customers. They can use this Pay Now button to actually pay you with a debit card, credit card, or bank transfer. Even better, after they pay you, QuickBooks creates the payment and the deposit for you in QuickBooks, so you don't have to spend as much time recording those transactions. You can also use QBO payments to swipe or enter credit card or debit card information so you can charge directly through a sales receipt. On top of this, you can do all of this through the QBO mobile app. So you can even accept customer payments while you're outside of the office or store. To get started with QBO payments, just click the gear icon, select Account and Settings, and then choose the Payments tab. If you already have an Intuit Payments account, just select Connect. Otherwise, select Learn More to sign up. The sign-up process is completely free, but you will need to provide information about your business, such as your address, who owns the company, and which bank account you would like the deposits to be paid to. There is a fee for using QuickBooks Payments, but it's processed along with each customer payment, so you won't be paying anything yearly or monthly. The charges only happen when the feature is used to collect payments from customers. A frequently asked question is whether or not it's possible to pass these costs along to your customer, and the short answer is no. There is no automated way to do this. You could just include a processing fee with all of your purchases. But you will need to check with your accountant and local tax laws to verify that passing this cost on is even allowed. In the next few topics, you learn more about how to use QBO payments and about what the customer sees when you send them an invoice with that nice Pay Now button.
Let's send an invoice to a customer. So they can use the Pay Now button. First, enter the customer's name. Be sure to enter the customer's email if it doesn't automatically populate based on what you set up in the customers list. QuickBooks gives you two checkboxes, one that lets your customer pay by debit or credit card, and another to let them pay with their bank account. Be sure to fill out the rest of the invoice, such as terms, date, and any other options you have turned on. Then enter what you're charging the customer for. We'll use a catch-all item to make this as simple as possible. But you can use as many products and services as you like. Then, in the amount field, enter the amount you're charging them. Enter any extra messages you want to send in the Message to Customer field. Now let's save and send the invoice. QuickBooks lets you edit the email you're sending on the left and gives you a preview of what the customer will see on the right. You can also choose to let customers pay by debit card, credit card, or bank transfers on this window. Now let's save and send the invoice. Let's have a look at the customer's balance. Click their name, and you'll see that the invoice was sent. When the customer opens their email and looks at the invoice, this changes to Viewed, so you can track whether or not they've looked at what you sent them. Next, you see what this process looks like from the customer's point of view. Let's sneak a peek at what your customer sees. This is the email and invoice we just sent. Click the email. The email contains the message we sent earlier, as well as the amount due. When your customer is ready to pay, they can click Review and Pay. And the Pay window opens in a separate tab. To see more detail about the charges, the customer can click View Invoice. After viewing the invoice, they can close it. They also have the option to download or print the invoice. Because we used QBO Payments, the customer has a Pay Now button. Click it. And they can enter their credit card details. Or click the banking option to enter their banking routing number, account number, and any other necessary information. Note that QuickBooks also gives your customers the option to save their payment information. So if you have returning customers, it's easier for them to pay you after the first payment. Now the customer enters their information. QuickBooks confirms to the customer that the payment was sent. And they can print a receipt from here. Close the confirmation window. And the invoice is now marked as paid for the customer. Let's switch back over to our QBO company file. Now QuickBooks shows that the customer doesn't owe any money because they just submitted payment on the invoice. QBO Payments does everything for us, and we don't even have to enter a payment or deposit. Here's the payment transaction and the invoice, both with an open balance of $0. In the next topic, you learn how to record a customer payment with a sales receipt. QBO Payments also works if the customer pays you right away. Let's record a sales receipt to the same customer as earlier. Select New and choose Sales Receipt. Sales receipts don't require a customer name, but you can enter their name for reporting purposes or to quickly fill in their email address and other information. If your customer wants a copy of their receipt, be sure to enter their email address. Now enter everything the customer is purchasing. We'll make this transaction as simple as possible with a catch-all product item. But you can enter as much detail as you need. Then enter the quantity, rate, and/or amount of the sale. In the Payment section, you choose how the customer is paying. Click the Payments Method drop-down arrow and just choose from the options you see. Or create your own. Let's enter a credit card purchase. QBO can process the credit or debit card if you check this checkmark. Just click Enter Credit Card Details and key in the credit card information here. Intuit also offers a card swiper that can connect to your phone, computer, or tablet. If you've connected the card swiper, click Swipe Card, and QuickBooks processes the card that way. Note that QuickBooks gives you the option to save the customer's credit card information for later, making it easier to process payments from them on future purchases as well. You can also enter a customer's banking information to process their payment. Click the Payment Method drop-down arrow again and choose QuickBooks Payment, Bank. If you want QuickBooks to process the payment for you, check this checkbox and click Enter Bank Info. Here, QuickBooks gives us fields for the account number, routing number, name, and also an option to use this account information on future purchases. Let's process this customer's payment information. Once filled out, you have 10 minutes to complete your sales receipt transaction. Click Got It. Be sure to record all the details of the sale. And then choose your Save option. We'll save and send the customer a receipt. Here is the email they'll receive on the left and the receipt on the right. Send and close. That's it. Let's see what the sales receipt. Open the inbox. And here is the sales receipt they received from us. They can now view the email message we sent here at the top. And there's an attached PDF receipt at the bottom. However you sell your products, QBO payments can make the process easier and more efficient.
The best part of QBO payments is that it automates the process of recording customer payments and deposits. So all you have to do is send out the invoice, and then the customer pays you. QBO then takes over and does the rest of the work. But what does that look like? Under the Invoicing or Sales tab on your nav bar, you'll notice a new option called Deposits. This is where QuickBooks keeps all the details about the payments and deposits that it processes for you. Each day's worth of deposits appears in a separate section that can be expanded into more details. Each entry lists the payments you've received, who you received the payments from, and the total money that was deposited into your bank account, along with information about the processing fees that were charged. QBO payments will save you a load of time, but there are even more ways to save time, and we'll cover those next. QuickBooks is full of time-saving features designed to make your life easier, if you know about them. That doesn't mean that QuickBooks is going to do your dishes or pick the kids up from soccer practice, but it can help you enter transactions or perform small bookkeeping tasks faster. These features aren't always advertised, but fortunately, you have Mastering QuickBooks to tell you all about them. First, we're going to talk about Quick Math, which is an easy way to perform basic math functions like add, subtract, multiply, divide, while you're entering a transaction. After that, you'll learn about date shortcuts. Date shortcuts are an easy way to change the date while working with a transaction or entering date ranges into reports. Last, you'll learn about some handy keyboard shortcuts, known as hotkeys. They can help you find things quickly and easily in QBO. So sit back, get ready to learn about Quick Math. In the meantime, I'm off to suggest that QuickBooks should add a feature that helps me fold my clothes.
Let's open a check and see how Quick Math works. We've got a new customer that wants to build an elaborate outdoor aviary. So we call up Amy's Bird Sanctuary to get some prices on birds. Enter materials as the category. While we're on the phone with Amy's Bird Sanctuary, Amy tells us that the first bird our customer wants is $50. And then tells us that the second bird is $100. We could enter this second bird as another line on the invoice, or we could just have QuickBooks do the math for us. Enter plus, 100, then tab. Notice that QuickBooks adds the 100 to the 50 for a total of 150. We've decided not to buy the first $50 bird, so just enter minus 50 and tab. And QuickBooks deducts $50 from 150 to get 100. We like the $100 bird a lot, so much in fact that we want 10 of them. Type Shift 8, which is the asterisk symbol on your keyboard, then 10 and tab. Now we have a check for $1,000. That's a little too much because we only have a budget for $500 worth of birds. So we'll cut this number in half by pressing the / key on the keyboard, and 2 to divide this $1,000 in half. Then tab. QuickBooks does the math, and we end up with $500 as the total. Use Quick Math to perform simple calculations while you enter transactions. Date shortcuts help you to quickly enter dates on transactions or in date ranges on reports. You can use date shortcuts on nearly any transaction or report. In the date field, you have to enter the day the transaction took place. Or if you're looking at a report's date fields, you need to enter the earliest and latest date in a date range. Let's enter April 1st and then a year without /. Then tab. Notice that QuickBooks knows where to put the /, so there's no need to type those in. You can also click the calendar icon to reveal a calendar that allows you to select the date. You can also use other date shortcuts to quickly move from one date to another. Maybe you want to enter a transaction that happened at the beginning of the year. Press the Y key on your keyboard, and QuickBooks takes you to the beginning of the year. Why the letter Y? Because it's the first letter of the word year. You can also press Y again, and again, and again, and each time, it takes you back a year, always to the beginning of the year. You can also go to the end of the year if you press R on your keyboard, and QuickBooks takes you to December 31st. Why? Because R is the last letter of the word year. You can press R again and again and again, and QuickBooks takes you to the next year, always the end of the year. This also works with months. If you want to go to the beginning of a month, press M, because M is the first letter of the word month. And you can press M again and again and again, always going to the beginning of the previous month. This also works with H, to take you to the end of the month, because month, of course, ends with the letter H. Pressing H again and again and again takes you forward a month each time, always to the end of the month. Then there are also weeks. You can get to the beginning of a week by pressing W, because W is the first letter of the word week. And W again and again and again. It always takes you back 1 week to the beginning of the week. K also works to take you to the end of the week, because K is the last letter of the word week. Press K again and again and again to go forward a week each time, always at the end of the week. Maybe you just want to go forward or backwards by 1 day. No problem. Just press the plus symbol on your keyboard to go forward, or the minus symbol to go backwards. All this time traveling is exhausting. To go back to today, just press T, and the date goes back to today. Use date shortcuts on transactions and reports to quickly change the date field. QuickBooks is easy to navigate, but it's even easier when you use keyboard shortcuts. These shortcuts are combinations of keys that do certain actions in QuickBooks. They're also sometimes known as hotkeys. For example, have you ever used Control-C to copy text? These shortcuts are similar, so let's see what we can do. Press the Control and Alt keys on your keyboard, and then the question mark key. Or if you're using a Mac, press Control and Option and the question mark key. QuickBooks opens the Keyboard Shortcuts window. For most of these shortcuts, you also have to hold down Control and Alt, or Option. So if you want to use a keyboard shortcut to record a new invoice, you press Control and Alt, or Option, and the I key. Let's put these to use. Press Control and Alt, or Option, and I. And here is the new invoice screen. You can also dismiss an empty transaction screen with the Escape key. Looking at this list again, keyboard shortcuts help you with more than just opening new transactions. You also use keyboard shortcuts to save your transactions and even print them. Use keyboard shortcuts to quickly move from one screen to another.